Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. I have been doing wrap-ups now for over a year, and partway through 2024, mainly for timing reasons, I decided to do seasonal wrap-ups, or quarterly wrap-ups, I guess, let's say. And I think I'm going to have to move back to doing them either monthly or every other month, because I have read, looking at my notes, I have read almost 20 books, or I have 20 books to tell you about today, and I'm not going to get to all 20 today. So this is going to be part one of my winter 2024/5 wrap up, and then I will do part two. I'll film that another day. Just as a disclaimer or a trigger warning, some of the books I talk about have quite serious content in them. So I just thought I'd mention that at the beginning, just in case anybody finds these unsettling. Let's get started. I'm going to do 1 through 10 in this video, and then I'll do the next however many I end up finishing by the end of March and the next time I film. So the first book, which I have already mentioned on my channel because it was one of the top books of 2024, I can link that video for you, is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And the narrator, so I listened to this on audiobook, was Miranda Raison. And I gave this 5 stars, which is why it ended up in my best of video. I read this last December, but bear in mind I was doing seasonal, so that's why it's been from a while ago. And this book was historical fiction. Let me just turn to my other notes. Historical fiction. It's about Elizabeth Zott. It was set in the 1960s. Elizabeth Zott is a chemist, and she is finding quite a lot of challenges being a woman in that industry and academia, not being taken seriously at that point, sort of a societal cultural reflection, and facing a lot of discrimination as a scientist. She ends up eventually doing a sort of like Julia Childs style cooking show, but with a real emphasis on science and chemistry. The book is all very much tied into sort of mother-daughter relationships, and it is really funny. I highly recommend it to anybody. I think I really did enjoy the audiobook, so obviously I haven't read it in print, so I can't compare, but I would recommend it as an audiobook. It worked well. It was quirky, it had a really strong feminist theme running through it, and it was just really good historical fiction. So that was the first book of the winter that I read. The next one was House of Correction by Nicci French. I can't remember who the narrator was for this, but maybe I can pop that up on the screen. I gave this 3 stars, and I read this back in December. And this was actually in one of the other videos I did not too long ago. I think it was a tag video. I mentioned that I'm going to take a break from reading Nicci French books for a while, and I think it was as a result of this one that I just felt like it was yet another book that had sort of let me down, and I think mostly because I just couldn't engage with it. But in any case, this House of Correction is about a woman named Tabitha who's currently in prison. She's awaiting trial for murder, but she's convinced that she didn't do the murder, and she ends up representing herself. I didn't connect with the character of Tabitha. I found the dialogue and I guess writing in general a little bit dull, and it's unmemorable because I can't remember what happens in the end. I do remember what happens in the end, but in terms of the main plot points, I couldn't tell you. House of Correction was a little bit of a miss for me, unfortunately. The third book, which was again also a December read, was The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey. This came out in 2020 because I remember there was a lot of hype on BookTube about this book at the time, and maybe also got some prize nominations as well, for good reason. Again, I haven't written down the narrator, apologies, I'll pop it on the screen for you. I gave this book 4 stars, and I 100% recommend the audiobook for this one because it had the most wonderful accents, and I think they really helped bring the story to life, to give it like full cultural appreciation. This book is set in the 1970s. Well, I think it's actually a dual timeline, but originally the 1970s. And it's about Acheampong, who is a woman from a long time ago who was cursed by other women for messing around with their husbands and was cursed to become a mermaid. And then David ends up being out on his boat and rescues her from fishermen, and then she eventually turns into a woman. And it's sort of their love story and her coming to terms with being in a new body and in a new time period and all of that sort of stuff, and the kind of prejudices that she faces. It was mythical. Again, it was a strong female character, which is what I look for in my reading. And it was just really culturally rich. I'd never read anything like that before. And I love any folklore that's about mermaids. And I just really liked it. It was such a beautiful story. So yes, 100% recommend the audiobook. And if you can't get your hands on that, then read the print. It's brilliant. Yes, that's The Mermaid of Black Conch. 4 stars from me. The 4th book that I'd like to share, and this is one that I read back in January, is called The Dry, and that's by Jane Harper. Again, I listened to this on audiobook and I didn't put the narrator in, so I'll pop that on the screen. I only gave this 3 stars. I think this is the 2nd Jane Harper book I've read, and I just don't think I gel with her, so I might just part ways with Jane Harper. But this book was a murder mystery detective thriller. So a family is murdered, and then it's an investigation by federal officers in a farming community in rural Australia during a drought, hence the name The Dry. I just didn't enjoy it. I don't remember much about it. It just hasn't stuck with me, so I would give it a miss. Number 5, A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I read this as an ebook back in January. I very much enjoyed it, so I was totally hooked, even if the writing is not very good. So yeah, she is not, Sarah J. Maas would not win any literary prizes for the sophistication of her writing, but she writes a good story. Obviously, they're so popular, right? And I did find some of it a bit tedious. There's a bit where, I don't want to like ruin anything, but there's a bit sort of in the last third of the book where she's trying to get out of her difficult situation, and I found that bit sort of dragged a little bit. But I did find the beginning of ACOTAR really interesting, and I was hooked from that point, and I also liked all of the sexual tension in it. I think that's why the book is partly so popular. So yes, I am a convert to Sarah J. Maas, and I will keep reading these books. I don't think I'll ever become somebody who only reads romantasy, or only reads fantasy for that matter, but I can appreciate why these are interesting and popular books. Okay, number 6 is The Hoarder. In the US, this is called Mr. Flood's Last Resort, and this book is by Jess Kidd. Again, I listened to this on audiobook and I haven't listed the narrator, so apologies for that. This came as a recommendation from Kim at middle of the book march, and I will put Kim's channel down below for you because she does some great content. Kim, I didn't like this book, and I feel really badly about that, but so this book is about Maud, who is a carer and she's also a psychic, which I completely did not get. Sorry, my neighbor is cutting things and it's very loud. Yeah, she's a psychic, which I completely didn't get, and I was very confused about why there were all of these saints that kept appearing in the story. So I think that's part of the reason why I didn't connect to this, because I don't know anything about Christianity and saints. But yeah, Maud ends up going to look after a man called Mr. Flood, who is a hoarder and a very... Sorry, I had to move to a different spot in the house, and I'm standing up now because my neighbor decided to start using an electric saw right when I was filming. So yeah, so where was I at? I was at The Hoarder by Jess Kidd. So yes, I found the saints aspect of it incredibly confusing and distracting from the main sort of mystery of the book. To be honest, there were so many sort of plot points that I just couldn't keep track of them. There was, you know, why Mr. Flood was a hoarder in the first place, his family secrets, yeah, with this, why Maud is a psychic. So yeah, I just didn't get it. I did like the eccentric landlady character, Maud's landlady, but beyond that, I think The Hoarder, Mr. Flood's Last Resort was a miss for me, and I just don't think that I gel with Jess Kidd's writing style, but I'm glad I tried it. Okay, moving on. Number 7 is Demon Copperhead. I don't have my copy with me right now, but Barbara Kingsolver wrote Demon Copperhead, and I gave this 5 stars, and I read this in January as part of my workbook club. So Demon Copperhead is a retelling of David Copperfield by Dickens, and I honestly think that it would have been helpful to have read David Copperfield. In our book club discussion, one of my colleagues was saying that she had read it, and it was really helpful to be able to compare and contrast the reimagined characters with the originals, and I just didn't have that context at all. But as I took it sort of for what it is, I love Barbara Kingsolver's writing. She's one of my favorite authors, and she writes the Appalachia area really well. I looked at her biography recently, and although she's not originally from that area, I think she's resettled there and has a really good understanding of the culture of the area and their socioeconomic struggles. And so yeah, this book is about Demon or Damon, and he is a boy who is born and raised in that Appalachia area, ends up with a lot of involvement with social care, and it's basically just his life as growing up from a child through the care system to an adult, the usual problems that you see in that area, particularly during the time that it was set with like opioid crises and that sort of thing. So it was a really powerful book. I very much enjoyed it. I felt that the very ending was a little bit too rushed, and that she tried to wrap everything up too quickly. But beyond that, I enjoyed the social commentary. I thought that the aspects of humor, where there was humor, was dark, but it was refreshing. And I would just put it as a must read. I think Demon Copperhead should probably be on some curricula at this point. That is just so well written, and would be a really interesting case study to do. Compare it with the original. But yeah, so if you haven't read Demon Copperhead, I very much recommend it. And I recommend Barbara Kingsolver's writing in general. It's fantastic. Number 8. This is probably one of the only non-fiction books I read so far this year, and this is The Book You Want Everyone You Love to Read by Philippa Perry, and it was an audiobook which was self-narrated. I gave this 4 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first one about, I can't remember the title, about things you wish some people told you as a parent, something like that. And I didn't find that this worked very well as an audiobook. mainly because the layout of the text, Philippa Perry ended up repeating herself a lot. I did like her examples. So Philippa Perry uses a lot of anonymized case studies from either her clinical work or from her like newspaper column. And the bit that I found, so this is all about like love and relationships, right? And there's lots of great advice, but the bit I found the most insightful was about friendships, because I'd never thought about friendships this way. And she was basically exploring that people approach friendships differently, and that there's some people who go into a friendship with like an all or nothing attitude, and other people look at it as more of a time and place thing. And that if there's two people that are approaching a friendship in a different way, it can become really problematic when the expectations aren't met. And I've definitely had that in friendships. So yeah, it's just really useful to hear some of her examples of different perspectives on relationships, and it certainly helped me think about my relationships with other people and how I can be mindful that relationships can be approached in many different ways. Right, 2 more for today. And the 9th book I listened to was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, I've read The Hobbit lots of times. I read the cartoon version from the 70s lots. I've obviously seen the film loads of times, but I'd never listened to the audiobook, and I saw that there was a version narrated by Andy Serkis, who played Gollum, available on Libby app, and I was like, oh yes, please, I will re-listen to The Hobbit. And yeah, obviously 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books. I mainly wanted to just hear Andy Serkis's approach to The Hobbit, and he did a fantastic job. Obviously, he played Gollum's voice in his original voice from the films, but he also had all of the other character voices as well. And it was so well done. So I would definitely listen to it again just to hear Andy Serkis tell me a story. In terms of The Hobbit itself, I've listened to it enough times or read it enough times that my only critique is the ending, that they're at the Lonely Mountain and smog and whatnot, and that's all resolved. And then there's this whole like battle bit, and I'm just like, why? I know it sets up for things in the future, but I think personally it would have been a better story if it had concluded at that moment with the end of smog, much like I think that The Lord of the Rings should have ended after they threw the ring into the fire. But differences of opinions, I guess. And the last book that I listened to, again, apologies for not putting the narrator on, but this was Women Talking by Miriam Toews, I think it is. It's Toews. I think that's Toews. And I'll pop the narrator on the screen. And this was a January-February read. I had heard about this because Sarah Polley, who is a Canadian actress and director, a few years ago, did a film adaptation of this, which got a lot of positive feedback. And I saw that the audiobook was available, and I thought, why not? So this is where that sort of trigger warning comes in, that this is quite an unsettling story about a Mennonite community in Central America, where the women were repeatedly drugged and then sexually abused over a long period of time, and kept thinking that it was basically like demons or spirits doing it, but it was actually the men of their community. And so this book looks at a point where the women are coming together and discussing what should be done, as the men who were charged are off in the city awaiting trial. It's really hard hitting, but it is fascinating, the whole dialogue. And then the bit that I found really quite creative is that there is a male character in it who ends up leaving the community, going to London and then coming back, and he ends up being the minute taker for this group of women. And the whole way through you're sort of like, why is he the minute taker? Like, what's his role? How does this fit? And then I'm not going to give it away, but the ending, it just makes so much sense. And it was so beautifully and like compassionately explained that that's really stuck with me. So yeah, it's a hard book to listen to, but it has a lot of value in empowering women's voices. Let's put it that way. So those are the 10 books that I'm going to share with you for today. So we had Lessons in Chemistry, House of Correction, The Mermaid of Black Conch, The Dry, A Quarter Thorn and Roses, The Hoarder, Demon Copperhead, The Book You Want Everyone You Love to Read, The Hobbit, and Women Talking. And I will come back to you soon with the second part of my winter reads wrap up. And yeah, we can continue on from there. So again, sorry for the change in screen setting. I can still hear my my neighbor sawing away. I hope it's something productive. But I hope you're all well. What did you read this winter? Did you read anything that was the same as me? If so, what did you think? Do you have any like absolute 5-star reads that you'd like to recommend to me? I'm always interested to hear. And yeah, with that, I'm losing my voice now, so I'm just gonna head on and get going with the rest of my day, and I will see you all soon in a new video. Okay, take care. Bye bye.